card high over your head, not at shoulder level. Do not put your cards down until the tellers have told you that they have completed your row. Please hold your card high. Please keep your card. If you lose it, that's the only one you get this evening. Don't tear it in half to write something on the bottom half because you need a full card to be counted. If the tellers will take a count, please. Section 1. Section 1.
Section 1, 27, 27.
Section 127. Section 2.
27. 14, I'm sorry.
Section 214. Section 3.
53, 53.
Can you just speak up a little louder, please? Section 3.
53,
53. And Section 4.
Section 4, 20, 20.
Section 420. We have 114 voters in the hall. We only need 100 voters to open the meeting. Therefore, I now call this meeting to order. Last night, when I opened the meeting, I gave you all the rules that I traditionally put before you. I did have a request to repeat one part of that, and I am going to do that. And it was the section that says, town meeting does not come to an end until all the agenda items on the warrant have been decided either by approval, by being defeated, or no action deliberately taken. I just want to remind you that if you do need to leave the hallway, do not use the door on the right or in the back. Please, you only use this door to come in and out to maintain the integrity of the meeting. Again, my policy on photography is that you must ask for permission in advance. No one has approached me tonight other than the ones that I gave permission to last night from our press and from WCTV. Please turn off all of your cell phones and any electronic devices that you have. Last night, I acknowledged that there were several people who had passed away that had served on various boards and I was not aware of and did not mention, and so I would like to mention tonight Mr. Jim Macrees, who served as our town assessor for many, many years, and also Rosewell Baldwin, who served on the school committee for many, many years. Again, as per our charter, I must call for a roll call of the department heads who are required to be here at town meeting to answer any questions you may have.
Madam Moderator?
For what reason do you rise?
I rise to, in regards to the rules of the body and the proceedings as they occur under both Robert's rules.
Can you speak into the microphone? I'm sorry, it's very difficult to hear.
Yes, both as to pertains to Robert's rules and to town meeting times. I need some clarification on some items. In Robert's rules, one of the first things is that any person rising to speak to a motion is supposed to do so as soon as possible. They're not supposed to make any political speech, any political comment. They can only ask for clarification or help and assistance in putting the motion together. Is town meeting times different than that? Or do they have to make the motion first and then speak?
No, the motion needs to be made and then speak to it.
All right, if the motion needs to be made first and then speak, then to preamble any non-debatable motion is out of order, correct? Or does town meeting times allow that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Heath, I'm having trouble. Say that again.
All right, if an individual is going to make a motion that is non-debatable, may they, within their motion, preamble the original motion? In other words, put on a whole bunch of reasons, etc., according to town meeting's times. That's not allowed by Robert's rules.
They should state the motion as the motion is, yes.
And they should state it first.
Yes.
Right, okay. And they're not allowed to speak to it under town meeting times. All right. Robert's rules also says that no person in an assembly such as this town meeting is entitled to the floor a second time on the same motion as long as any member who has not previously spoken desires to speak.
Correct?
Is it the same under town meeting?
Yes.
So if I speak and stop, and somebody else, I can't interrupt anybody that's behind me. They have to speak first.
In order to speak a second time, yes.
Thank you. Also in Roberts, which I could see this not existing in town meeting, but I want to make sure that a person can only speak twice the same day on the same motion. Because I think this has a lot to do with how we do our business here. We
Okay.
run into these problems. All right. The other thing that comes up all the time, one of the tactics of extending debate is I ask you a question, and you know the question is coming, and I do it for the sole purpose of extending and getting all my points across. Because of that, Robert's Rules requires where we have a 2-minute or 5-minute limitation. If I ask a question, who gets charged for the answer? Me or the person who answers the question? Unless it's somebody like the town administrator, yourself, or legal counsel. It's another member of the body.
Well, generally, I mean, it's been tradition that if someone asks a question, we try to find the appropriate person that can answer that question.
Well, that's fine, but who gets charged for the time? I can keep asking questions forever. In 2 minutes, I can ask a lot of questions. And the people responding can answer, and if they're not being charged, they can take as long as they want. That's the reason why it's done, to not lengthen debate. All right, I would ask you to consider that going forward, make sure that people know exactly what they're allowed to do going forward. All right, one of the other things I wanted to bring up, postponed indefinitely is debatable, where laying on the table is not. I've been also trying to find something called a motion to table for further study. I cannot find that in Robert's Rules. Is that an acceptable motion under town meeting times, or is that something that we just sort of got used to using?
A motion to table is not debatable under town meeting time.
I'm not looking for debatable. I said, can it be for further study? Normally what it's done in legislative bodies, it's not tabled. It's withdrawn or moved or something's established or whatever. But it's not tabled for further study. It can be postponed indefinitely, which is basically what's used by parliamentary procedure to kill a bill.
Further study is akin to negative action.
Okay. Under Robert's Rules, if an appeal is made and seconded, it cannot be denied. Town meeting times let you deny it, correct? An appeal.
Mr. Heath,
I'm trying to get the rules
I
down.
understand, and I understand.
And I'm trying to make sure that we do things correctly and we move them as we move along.
And I completely
The other last issue that I have, Mrs. Smith, and I don't mean to interrupt, but let me finish this one. Laying on the table, all right? To lay something on the table, right out of Robert's Rules, is it cannot be laid on the table unless, one second. You lay something on the table when something else of an immediate urgency has arisen in such a way that there's no set time for taking the matter up again, but its consideration can be resumed at the will of a majority and in the preference to any new question that may then be competing with it for consideration. Next thing I want to read you what Robert says, because this is important. By adopting the motion to lay on the table, the majority has the power to halt consideration of a question immediately without debate. Such action violates the rights of the minority and individual members if it is for any other reason than the purposes I stated in the first sentence. In ordinary assemblies, the motion to lay on the table is out of order if the evident intent is to kill or avoid dealing with a measure. If a time for resuming consideration is specified in making the motion, it can be omitted only as a motion to postpone, in which case it is debatable.
Thank you, Mr. Heath.
Does that apply?
A lot of things that are in Robert's Rules of Order do not pertain to town meeting, which is why, let me finish, which is the reason why many towns have gone to the absolute use of town meeting time. Our bylaws in our charter say that we run our meeting by the 75th edition of Robert's Rules, which I believe isn't even in existence anymore, by town meeting time, and by tradition. Under Mass General Laws, the moderator, also under Chapter 39, I believe it's Section 15, is giving a great amount of discretion to regulate the meeting. Every town meeting is different, every situation is different, so that chapter gives the moderator a lot of room to regulate and set the rules for the meeting. Now, last night when the issue came before us, I went by town meeting time. The motion to lay on the table is not debatable, and that was the ruling that I made.
Not debatable means nobody speaks to it.
Correct.
My problem, moderator, is trying to understand whether I'm sitting here or whether I'm sitting there, what I can and can't do. It's awful sketchy. We all need some classes. We need to know what motions can be made and which are out of order. We need to know the rules so that everything progresses quickly and to everyone's satisfaction. This is not a criticism of you personally, sorry, because this has happened for many years. But I think it's about time we did something about it, and I would hope by the October meeting that, like our preliminary town meeting session that we have, would not just be a reading of the articles that are in the warrant, but also an instruction on the actual conduct of the meeting and what the public should expect from the moderator and what the moderator expects from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. I struggled with this today, to be honest with you, and when I came in this evening, I actually spoke to the town clerk. And a lot of communities have actual bylaws that govern town meeting. And it may not be such a bad idea that over the next few months that we, with the town clerk, and I believe there was a committee formed years ago, to look at what we may need to put in our bylaws that would actually make things flow a little smoother. So, as of tonight, I did speak to the town clerk, and it's my intention that we will get together and try to do that so that these things don't occur and that we have a standardization going forward of all things. And thank you. Now, to call out for the department heads, we have the Board of Selectmen here. We have the Finance Committee, Board of Health, Chief Assessing Officer, Community Development, Conservation Agent, Council on Aging, Data Processing, EMS, Inspectional Services, Municipal Maintenance, Planning, Police Department, Shellfish Harbor Master, Town Accountant, Town Clerk, Town Treasurer Collector, Library Director, Water Pollution Control, School Superintendent. Madam Clerk. Article 21. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the town vote pursuant to Section 6-3 of the Charter, to approve the reorganization plan as shown in the handout dated April 22nd, 2013.
Do I have a second? Have a second. To speak to Article 21, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We have a quick PowerPoint presentation, and we'll start off with pursuant to 6.3 of the Charter, anytime there is a proposed reorganization, the town administrator must bring that before town meeting. It is clear that there needs to be another layer of financial control in the town, a person who not only creates policies and procedures in conjunction with the town administrator, but someone who is tasked to make sure those items are being adhered to. This article seeks to create that control through reorganization of the finance department and establishing the finance director position out of the treasurer collector's office. The last town accountant hired was also paid as the finance director. The town needs a working town accountant who is constantly manning the books and working to close the books for year end. The finance director will have direct reports from accounting, treasurer collector, and IT offices. Further, the finance director will serve as the town administrator's liaison to the assessing office. This position will not cost additional dollars, and the reorganization yields immediate salary savings. The savings are a result of reducing the town accountant's salary and eliminating the assistant town accountant position. The town has seen what happens when there is constant turnover in the accounting office. This reorganization plan will help stabilize the finance departments. This slide shows what I'm calling the FY13 status quo. At the beginning of the year, we budgeted for a town accountant at a little over $92,000. The assistant town accountant position, which is part-time or 30 hours, at just under $36,700. The treasurer collector position at a little over $85,000, totaling for $214,514.28. The reorganization, which would take effect in FY14, would have the town accountant at $73,370.15, and the finance director / treasurer collector would be $93,951.52. The total would be $167,321.67. The FY14 salary only savings are $47,192.61. That does not include benefit savings. This is our current organizational chart. You'll see town meeting, then the elected officials of the Board of Selectmen, which give guidance to the town administrator. The direct reports are the accounting department, the treasurer collector's office, IT department, and the assessing department. You will also see the Board of Assessors have part of governing the assessing department. The proposed change, which you would see is streamlined, the town meeting again, Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, and the direct contact to the town administrator would be the finance director, treasurer collector. You'd see below the direct reports to the finance director would be the accounting office, collector's office, IT office, and treasurer office. You'll see that's actually a dotted line going over to the assessing department. By our charter, the finance director cannot be above the assessing department. However, the town administrator can have the finance director as a liaison. So that is the explanation for the organizational chart there. What are some of the duties of the finance director? To ensure the completion of regular reconciliations of cash, receivables, and implementation of financial controls. Manages town's daily finance activities. Ensures all other finance departments effectively carry out their respective responsibilities. Is fully informed about the status of accounts, cash flow, and debts. Ensures that reporting requirements to the Department of Revenue are fulfilled on a timely basis. Having a finance director / treasurer collector, it sounds like a mouthful, but it's what's being done in the Commonwealth. Other communities, for example, are Brookline, Carlisle, Concord, Medway, Sturbridge, Uxbridge, and Walpole. So in speaking about this position, to sum it up, is I believe this position is necessary for the town to have additional financial oversight, to help make sure that we no longer have the material weaknesses and findings that we have in our audits, and to make sure that no matter who's sitting in the administrator's seat or in the town accountant's seat, there's an additional layer of security to make sure the finances are taken care of in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, what reason do you rise? Didn't. Mr. Worthen made the motion, correct? Yeah, Mr. Worthen made the motion. Mr. Worthen, you made the motion, correct? Yes, I did. And it's as is on the screen. I move that the town vote pursuant to Section 3 of the Charter. It's as the motion you made is exactly what is on the screen, correct? Thank you. There was some confusion up here. Okay. Okay, may I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted 3-1-0. Favorable action.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 4-0-1. The Finance Committee recommends favorable action on this article. The reorganization as proposed by the town administrator is clear and would hold the financial director responsible and accountable for the operation and oversight of the non-school related financial departments for the town of Wareham. This reorganization eliminates the confusion typical of two individuals reporting to a town administrator and assigns specific accountability relative to financial matters within the town's administration. The Finance Committee has noted that by charter, this article may not be amended on town meeting floor, and provided all requirements of the Wareham Home Rule Charter Section 6-3 have been met as required, recommends favorable action on the motion as presented at town meeting.
Thank you. I just would like to reiterate what our Finance Committee has said, that town meeting may only vote to either approve or disapprove, that there cannot be any amendments made to this article. When we stand to speak, your comments should be directed as to why you support approving or why you support not approving it. On my left?
Madam Moderator, Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. Through you, a question. This Finance Department, and I don't know if the Finance Committee member answered this, but is this going to include the school department also? Is all under this Finance Committee?
To answer the question, Mr. Sullivan?
No, it would not include the school.
So, if I may, Madam Moderator, does that mean that the school department has their own finance department?
To answer the question?
The school has was a business officer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bill Heaney, Precinct 1. First of all, I support the fact that we're going to save $47,000. I think that's great. But I do have a question regarding internal controls. And as I understand the way the current situation works, the town accountant is responsible to reconcile the books of the town with the treasurer collector's records. And so have we put in place policies and procedures that ensure internal control is enhanced, I guess, before this reorganization takes place?
To answer the question?
I guess the simple answer to that would be yes, they are doing that and working on it.
Okay. You didn't say that very enthusiastically, so
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Holmes?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to speak in favor of the town administrator's reorganization plan. I would just preface my remarks by saying this. My little grandson, Devin, isn't walking yet at 9 months old, but he's holding on to the fence and starting to take baby steps. It's my feeling that you hear a lot of comments from your elected officials about how we are one town of Wareham, and that everybody is part of that town, and that all departments are involved. I am a little disappointed in the fact that we did raise the suggestion of having one chief financial officer responsible to both the town administrator and the school administrator, instead of paying two people to report to two different people about two different sets of financial numbers. It would have been nice to have one person oversee both. So in my opinion, I don't think we're done with the finance reorganization, at least I hope not. But this is a small step, and what I mean by that is it is going to start to send a message to the taxpayers that Mr. Sullivan and his administration, and hopefully the school department, will join that in looking at the way we do business and the way that we provide services, and begin to start to combine that structure to get the most out of our money and provide the best services available. So I applaud Mr. Sullivan and those who worked on the reorganization plan. I don't think it goes far enough in terms of the finance department, but it's a step in the right direction. And if I could have 10 seconds to finish that statement?
10 seconds.
Okay. And I would hope in my goal that over the next 2 or 3 town meetings that Mr. Sullivan will bring forth several more reorganization plans until all departments are finished.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 21? Seeing no one standing, I will now call for a vote. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes by a majority. Article 15.
Madam Moderator, I move to approve this article as printed in the warrant.
Do I have a second? A second. To speak to the article?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. George Barrett, Chairman of the Planning Board. What you see before you is a article that will, number one, put a placeholder in a use chat for a medical marijuana treatment center. And then it will also place a moratorium on zoning related to that. The reason for this is the regulations that are going to govern this are not complete with the Department of Health, I believe. And we don't want something to come in that we're not ready for. The draft of the procedure for establishing these treatment centers has just been released. And I think we'll see a final version of that in a couple of weeks. And then we can tailor a zoning bylaw that would comply with that and be favorable to the town of Wareham instead of having something thrust upon us. Planning Board did hold a public hearing on this last night. We had one member of the press there. Other than that, there was no, well, even with that, there was no negative or positive input from the public. Planning board voted 4-0-0 to support favorable action for this.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 4-0-0.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 8-0-0.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said on the question on my right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brenda Ekstrom, Precinct 2. Through you to Town Council, while I support this article, and I think that we definitely need to limit the scope of the area that this is going to be in, I thought recently that the Attorney General's office came out. There was another town that attempted to do this, and the Attorney General's office came out and said that they couldn't do it, and I was just wondering if Town Council could shed any light on that. Thank you.
To answer the question?
Through you, Madam Moderator, the previous speaker. No, that's actually incorrect. What had happened was a town had tried to adopt a zoning bylaw that banned these facilities completely. So you're close, but and so the Attorney General said, no, you can't ban them. And the advice coming from the Attorney General is that if you want to regulate them in some fashion going forward, come up with a moratorium, don't go further than a year. That's basically what's in front of you. It gives you a chance to study the question of where or how these facilities might come in so that you don't run into an Attorney General strike down or a court strike down. So it was close, but this one's legit.
Mr. Barrett, are you standing just to answer questions?
I'm just for answering.
Okay. Selectman Slavin?
This particular issue actually came up in January during an MMA conference. The town administrator was there with myself, and this article was basically vetted out at that time as a way to, not so much control, but to put things in place for the public to have input as to location, etc. As already stated, you cannot ban it. I believe it was the town of Weston that already tried to do that, and it was refused. This is the best and simplest way to take care of this, so it's fair to everybody. Thank you.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 15? If not, I will call for the question. This does require a 2/3 vote because it is a part of the zoning bylaw. So I will try for unanimous. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes by a unanimous 2/3 vote. Article 22.
I move that the town vote to authorize the creation of a new rental inspection revolving fund for the purpose of funding the cost of the rental housing inspection program, which shall be credited with the receipts of the rental inspections not to exceed the sum of $50,000 and to be expended under the direction of the Board of Health.
Do I have a second? To speak to the motion?
What was that?
Madam Moderator, I believe the gentleman's coming.
Yeah. To speak to the motion.
Frank DeFelice, Precinct 5. I'm a chairman of the...
State your point. Oh, I'm sorry. The presenter of the motion has 5 minutes to speak to the article.
Frank DeFelice, I'm chairman of the Board of Health. This article, we're not asking for $50,000. I want everybody to understand that. All we're asking for is a revolving fund to be put up, and the money will become from the people that owns the rentals. We'll be receiving a fee from them, and that will go into this revolving fund. The 50,000 is a cap that the town administrator put on that. In other words, if we receive 50,000, then we can probably hire the help to oversee the program. Anything over 50,000 will go into the general fund. That 50,000 can be 30,000, but what you need to know is, though, no money is being asked tonight. All we're asking for is to set up this revolving fund. And the Board of Health gets over 300 complaints a year on rentals that are substandard. And what we want to do now is to try to bring that up and bring the rentals in the town so that they, under the state law, be able to be up to par. And so that's the reason why we're doing this, to set this program.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 3-0-1.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 5-3-0. This article establishes a maximum expenditure allowed for the revolving account established for the Board of Health as stated. Any excess revenue over the approved expenditure amount in the revolving fund at the end of the fiscal year will revert to the general fund.
Thank you. On my right?
Debbie Pettigrew, Precinct 6. I'd like to add an exemption to our...
Can you talk directly into the microphone, please?
Debbie Pettigrew from Precinct 6. I'd like to add an exemption to Article 22. If the landlord rents to a tenant that is receiving state or federal rent assistance, for example, Section 8, the property is already subject to an intense yearly inspection by the state, and it usually lasts all day long. When the state has completed the inspection, a letter is generated to show that the property is within compliance. This letter should be able to waive the $100 fee and the additional inspection.
Do you have that amendment in writing?
I do.
May I have it, please? I'm going to ask Town Council to take a look at this because if you're talking about Section 8, I'm not sure if there are laws that would pertain to it. So I'm going to ask Town Council to take a look at your amendment.
Point of information. I'll stand up.
State your point.
This article is seeking to establish a revolving fund. It's not the actual regulations. So would that not be outside the scope of this article?
Town Council.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess I could say ditto. But the person making the motion deserves more of an explanation than that. The article does propose to set up a revolving fund which will be funded by the fees that were actually received by the execution of the rental inspection program. Your amendment doesn't relate to the receipt of fees and putting them into the fund. Really what you're doing is creating an exemption under the regulations that the Board of Health might have to go out to inspect properties and to assess a fee. So that wouldn't pertain to the actual revolving fund. If the Board of Health were to take up an exemption like this and approve of it, as something that's not before this body today, then presumably those fees that you wanted exempted wouldn't be assessed and then wouldn't find their way into the fund.
Madam Moderator?
Just a minute.
I'd like to answer something to that.
No, Mrs. Pettigrew has given me the motion, which I need to rule on whether I would accept or not. And Mr. McDonald is absolutely correct. The only action that this body is taking is to vote to authorize the creation of a fund. any rules that would pertain to this inspection program would come through the Board of Health. So I think your intent in your motion would be something that you would need to bring to the Board of Health and talk to them for their consideration.
Okay, thank you. Would the Board of Health rules come before a town meeting again, or would it just be directly through their department?
I believe that the Board of Health has by state authority make their own rules.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Madam Moderator,
No, she didn't have a question.
Oh, I just want to speak. I just want to.
No, she did not have a question. She
all I wanna
presented
say is
an amendment.
We haven't done it
She
yet.
presented an amendment. I ruled on it. Now, I'm not sure who was standing next, whether it was on my right or on my left. On my right, Mr. Mulkern.
Hi, my name's Joseph Mulkern. I live in Precinct 2, and I moved here in 2009, and I was very involved in my previous town in the Board of Health, and I have attended most of the meetings in the Board of Health in the past 4 years, and I got to be very friendly with the employee that works part-time with the Board of Health that does all these inspections right now, and I get involved with him in a lot of things, especially these condemned buildings and derelict buildings. He's a fantastic person, and when I found out through the CEDAR director that his position, which is funded by CEDAR, the funds are not supposed to be used for paying an employee. And when I found that out, I went back to the Board of Health and stated it to him, and
Mr. Mulkern, the article before us is whether or not to create a stabilization fund. So your comment should be directed as to whether or not you support putting together a stabilization fund.
I do support it, but the thing is, I want to explain to the people that I was told by CEDAR this position is going to be eliminated in September, and it's a needed position, and I support it 100%. Is that all I have to say?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
On my left.
Hi, I'm Margie Tamala, Precinct 5, and I got my information out of Wareham Week, and that's just about all I've gotten so far. Is there any place we can find more information on this?
I believe if you went to a Board of Health meeting, the Board of Health meeting, I'm sure will be discussing this rental program and its rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the gentleman on my left was next.
Jeff Tamala, Precinct 5. I'm interested in why we need to spend this extra money. You say that Mr. DeFleece says that we have 300 calls. If they're going to start finding people, why didn't they do it prior? Why are we going for extra money now? And why do we need to create this and spend this money when they could have been doing it from the get-go? Why do we need another inspectional service when we have one?
I believe the article before us, Mr. Tumala, is the creation of a stabilization fund, and I would defer to Mr. Sullivan, but I believe the reason we would need to create a stabilization fund is so that these monies would have a mechanism of which to come into the town. Is that not correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's a revolving fund that we're doing.
Revolving fund. I'm sorry. I think, Mr. Haney, you were next.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bill Heaney, Precinct 1. I just have a question with the way the motion is written. From about the middle of the paragraph, just after the comma, where it says, which shall be credited with receipts of rental inspections not to exceed the sum of $50,000. You could read that to mean that the total receipts from rental inspections won't exceed $50,000, but I think it means that that the account won't exceed $50,000. So, is there an intention that the receipts would not exceed $50,000?
To answer that question, Attorney Bowen.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, the very inelegant language in the motion recites the formula that's set out in the statute. And the intention is that up to, but not more than, $50,000 of fine money could go into this account. If, say, you say that the fines amounted to a total of $60,000, only $50,000 could go into this account. The other $10,000 would have to go into the general fund. By state law, there's a cap, I believe it's 1% on the total amount of revolving fund money that you can have. And so the law requires that you specify a ceiling for each revolving fund. So all that does is it doesn't cap the amount of fines that the town could pursue. It doesn't say that there can be single fines of $50,000. I know that's not what you meant. It just says you can put no more than $50,000 of fine money into this account.
So just let me ask a follow-up question, please. If you put $30,000 in and spent 10, can you then put another $30,000 in, totaling 50? So the account total is 50, or do you cap out?
No, I understand. With your permission, Madam Moderator, I certainly would defer to the accounting officials here, but my understanding of it is it's not a current balance figure. It is a total receipts figure.
Thank you.
Am I right?
Hi, Michelle Langford, District 4. I have some questions about this rental housing inspection program. Is that a done deal? And because I have some strong reservations about that, I think it will bring down, it'll raise the cost of rent for some renters. And it sets a precedent where, these
Mrs.
fees...
Langford, there's nothing before us that deals with Section 8. This is only to set up a fund.
I'm not talking about Section 8. I'm talking about this rental housing inspection program. Is this a done deal? Does it already exist? And are we going to be able to vote on the fees they're going to charge? Or are we just giving them a blank check as to what they can do with this up to $50,000 revolving fund?
To answer the question, Mr. Sullivan?
Madam Moderator, this has not been established. It would be established by the Board of Health. This would not create the program. It would only establish a revolving fund.
Okay, so if we vote against this, then the rental inspection program goes away?
No.
No,
Okay.
that's incorrect.
Okay. So no matter how we vote on this, the rental inspection program may come to fruition?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Come on,
Regardless of how we vote on this, will there still be a rental housing inspection program?
That would be entirely up to the Board of Health, and you would need to go to the Board of Health meeting and ask that question.
Okay, so we don't have any input for that?
No.
Okay.
Am I right?
Frank Heath, Precinct 2. Madam Moderator, I'd like to ask a question of our accounting officials and our legal counsel. Revolving funds for the state, is the $50,000 limited to the receipts, the balance, or the expenditures? I think it's the expenditures, and that's critically important, which means anything, once you hit the $50,000, all monies would go into the general fund automatically. But I'd like to have a clarification of that if we could get it.
To answer the question?
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, as I had indicated to Mr. Haney, this would not be, well, let me start it differently. $50,000 is the total amount of fine money that could go into this account for any given fiscal year. That $50,000 could be spent. Any money that was received over and above the $50,000, if in fact that much came in, would have to go into the general fund for appropriation.
Thank you.
Am I right?
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. I rise in favor of this, and it's my understanding that the funds we're talking about of $50,000 would also include a fee. That's a fee to go out and do the inspection. So the fee and any type of fine would go into this revolving fund. And then once it reaches $50,000, the excess would go in to the general fund of the town. And this $50,000 is going to be used to pay for the individual to go out and do the inspections. So it's not going to cost the town a nickel. It's going to cost the landlord a fee, and I don't want to guess what the fee may be, but it's going to be a fee of the landlord to go out and pay for the inspection to ensure that the rental property is up to par. So I urge you to vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. On my left.
Stanley Andrews, Cranberry Highway. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one shot at this. If you pass this, you're giving the Board of Health carte blanche to set these fees of whether it's $100 for every landlord. The landlord isn't going to pay that. The tenant's going to pay it. The people that can't afford it is going to end up paying it. If we do not pass this article, they have no way of taking that money and charging the $100 because they need that revolving account to put the money into. I realize the general fund, but what I'm saying is if they turn around and the Board of Health, in my opinion, the Board of Health gets out of hand sometimes, but that's another story. But we cannot pass this, otherwise we're going to get the $100 fine, $100 for every landlord to register. And then that money will go into the revolving fund. And that money, if they can't put it in a revolving fund or anything, maybe we can curtail this extra money that the tenants are going to pay, not the landlord. Thank you.
Thank you. On my left.
Madam Moderator, Cliff Sylvia, Precinct 1. I'd like to move the question.
Do I have a second? We have a motion before us to move the question. It does require a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? It passes by an uncounted 2/3 vote. The main motion now comes before us. The motion before you is that the town vote to authorize the creation of a new rental inspection revolving fund for the purpose of funding the cost of a rental housing inspection program. As you have the motion before you, it requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? No. It passes by a majority. Article 26.
Madam Moderator, can I ask you a point of information, please?
State your point, Mr. Holmes.
The motion that you just passed on this revolving account, if I understood the answer to the question by Mr. Bowen, that fund could ultimately grow into very large numbers. It's not capped at 50,000. Is that correct, what I heard?
At this point, Mr. Holmes, we have passed this article, and that was a question that maybe should have been directed during the conversation. I would suggest that you ask.
They moved the question, and I was trying to clarify what town council said.
I know, but when someone moves the question, there's no more discussion. I would suggest that you could.
It's not a Board of Health issue.
I understand. I suggest that you talk to Mr. Bowen after the meeting, get the answer to your question.
So you're not going to clarify what we just passed?
What we passed was the creation of a revolving fund.
Right.
For the purpose of funding the cost of a rental housing inspection program. That is what was passed.
Right. Not to exceed.
Not to exceed the sum of $50,000.
Correct?
Correct.
So to people listening, that fund can never go over 50,000, but that's not what he said. He said that if I collect 30,000 this year and I only spend 10, there's 20 in there. Right?
I will have town council clarify it, Mr. Holmes, so that we can get this.
Yeah, please, thank you, because that is confusing, because it doesn't say the balance.
Let Attorney Bowen answer your question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker in the meeting. The total amount of receipts that can be placed in the revolving fund during any one fiscal year is $50,000. It's not a current balance. You couldn't say, for example, take in $100,000, then just before you get the 100, spend 50 of it, so it stayed at 50. No, it's a total receipts cap. Anything that comes in $1 over $50,000 goes into the general fund. So while Mr. Holmes is absolutely correct that if this were a very aggressive program, the amount of money taken in could be quite substantial. The amount that could actually go into this fund for any one fiscal year is $50,000.
Thank you. We have before us Article 26. May I have a motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
State your point.
I believe we took the quorum count. We didn't have enough to deal with money funds. Can we take a quorum count now because this is a money article?
Mr. Pasevich, we weren't dealing with any funds.
This article here deals with an outlay of $30,000.
Right. That's correct, right? You are correct. So we will not be able to take this article up. You're absolutely correct.
Could we, Madam Moderator, could we request a quorum count now? Because I know some people came in after we did the original count. So we might have the quorum count to deal with this item.
Absolutely. Would the tellers please come forward? Would everyone please hold up their cards to be counted? Section 1.
Section 131.31.
Section 131. Section 2.
23.
Section 2, 23. Section 3.
70.
Section 3, 70. Section 4.
Section 4, 43, 43.
Section 4, 43. We have 167 in the hall. We do have a quorum to take up this article. May I have a motion?
I move that the town vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund unallocated funds under the category of open space recreation up to the sum of $30,000 for a comprehensive conditions assessment of all town-owned playgrounds, and further to develop passive recreation plans for the following open space parcels: 1, Bryant Farm; 2, Ahern property; and 3, Westgate property.
Do I have a second? To speak to the article? Am I right?
Yes, thank you. Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. This is a grant request submitted by the Wareham Municipal Maintenance Department to spend up to $30,000 on a comprehensive condition assessment of our town-owned playgrounds, which we have 15, and 3 pieces of land recently purchased by CPA funds. Within the last year, Community Preservation Act changed its rules regarding recreation property. Prior to that, no renovation of a recreation site could be done unless the land was purchased with CPA funds. This law has recently changed, saying that we can rehab our playgrounds regardless of how the land was purchased or obtained. And because of that change, the maintenance department is looking at no more than $30,000 to give us a full, complete understanding of our playgrounds and what our options are regarding the rehabbing of those playgrounds, plus the recreation usage for three recently purchased property, Hearn, Westgate, and Bryant Farm. We purchased Bryant Farm some time ago and have done nothing with that site. The conservation restriction on it allows us to put in a picnic area, a little parking area. Maybe people don't even know where the Bryant Farm site is. It's right off of Sandwich Road. The Westgate property recently purchased is off of Paper Mill Road. It's right on a river. We could use a assessment to say whether or not this is a great place for a kayak launch point. Let's use our resources. There have been some studies done by existing committees, Fields and Grounds, Open Space, and their 7-year recreation plan. Those are all foundation points to which to add on to this assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 4-0-0.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 8-0-0. The Finance Committee supports this article as a way to improve the overall quality of the community. In addition to neighborhood and town-owned playgrounds, the town owns several properties which would benefit from minor improvements, such as signage and the creation of designated parking. And a professional assessment is the first step in making this happen.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said on my right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brenda Ekstrom, Precinct 2. Is the $30,000 paying for just the assessment? And if I heard the presenter correctly, that municipal maintenance is going to be giving us that assessment? I mean, Frank,
to answer the question?
The assessment would be sent out as a request for proposal for a professional organization, entities, or companies that do playground assessments. It would not be done internally. We would send it out to a professional, take bids on it, and choose the one that it can best give us the information needed. We would end up with a report. What do we have? What do we need? What do we change? What do we do something else with and that's currently there? So a professional entity would be coming in to give us our answer.
Thank you.
Well, as much as I can appreciate the sentiment of this, I think we should vote against it because I would rather see them use the $30,000 and actually have the repairs and improvements happen with that $30,000. We all know what's the matter with the playgrounds. All those playgrounds were originally created. There are plans in town hall or in municipal maintenance on what they should have been or what they're supposed to be. And I'd rather use the $30,000 on some grass and some lawn care and paying the maintenance workers to get out there and do it rather than having another assessment that will probably sit on a shelf like the majority of them that we do end up being.
Thank you. Am I right? Mr. Donahue?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to the previous speaker and the body, it's very easy to say we all know what we have. I will tell you that 2 years ago when I was convalescing, my husband, who was a member of the Open Space Committee, came home with a packet of all the information for town-owned properties of what we do have. I work in the real estate field, so I was happy to go on the computer and start looking these up. I spent weeks home looking to see what we have, where it is, and driving around town looking at it. It's a little daunting to figure it out from that point of view. We don't really know what we have, what's there, and what makes the most sense to improve. We had a wonderful example by the Deacon's School Group that renovated the playground out there and showed what can be done with community spirit and putting the effort together. And I think this is a great jumping off point to kind of pull those resources together and give us a plan of action to move forward because, again, the Open Space Committee has an open space plan and has acknowledged some of the areas there. We have a lot of town property that's very valuable and is sitting there doing nothing, and we can't take advantage of it because we don't even know where to park to get out and walk. I think this is what we need to do to just start in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 26? Seeing no one standing, I'll now call for the vote. This requires a majority vote. The vote before you is to appropriate from community preservation funds from the unallocated funds under category of open space a sum of up to $30,000 for comprehensive conditions assessment as is before you on the screen. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes by a majority. Article 31. Article 31 is the petitioner's article to present the motion. Am I right? The petitioner, would you prefer the Finance Committee to make the motion, or?
Yes, I would, and then I'll speak to the article.
Okay.
Madam Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve this article as written in the warrant.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to speak to the article. Am I right?
The article has to do with sewer commissioners. It is in your warrant. Madam Moderator, I have notes in front of me. I just want to check before I do this.
Can you speak directly into the microphone, please?
I just want to check. Can I read from my notes?
Absolutely, if that's more comfortable for you, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was okay.
That's fine.
During the fall town meeting, 2010, a vote was taken and passed to create a board of sewer commissioners. It was sent to the state where it lay without action for some time because there were wording difficulties. By the time these problems were discovered by the town and corrected, the state felt that the bill had become stale and said it would need to go before the town meeting again to be confirmed before they would consider it. In the fall of 2012, a reworded article was placed before town meeting, but it was felt that not enough time had been given to review the article, so it was voted to table it for further study. Since no study committee was proposed, and the selectmen declined to appoint such a committee, the article was in effect killed by an act of parliamentary procedure. I do not believe that this was the intent of that town meeting. I am therefore proposing this article for the following reasons. To give the town meeting the opportunity to decide if they want a board of sewer commissioners chosen by public election. Because I believe we need such a board whose sole focus is water pollution control rather than having an already overburdened board of selectmen who are trying to deal with a multitude of town issues, deal with water pollution control as well. Each selectman is on 8 to 12 committees as a liaison. If we figure each committee meets once a month and that the Board of Selectmen meet once a week, that is 16 meetings out of a 30-day month. That does not include any additional local, regional, etc. events that require their presence or the prep time required for them to be current with the things that are being considered on their own meetings. Water pollution control is an approximately $6.5 million concern that needs focused attention for planning for an age system and future considerations, federal and state requirements and mandates, just to mention a few items. There is hope that the people who have expertise that would mesh with water pollution control would be willing to run for this office, where they might not wish to be selectmen, as well as sewer commissioners. In any case, the people elected, whether they had previous experience or not, would have their time invested in sewer matters only. This commission would still function as part of the town government, needing to come before this body for budgetary matters and be controlled by the charter and bylaws of the town. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 004. This was due to what we thought was a conflict since we are the sewer commissioners.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 4-1-0.
Thank you. For discussion, gentleman on my right.
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. I'd like to introduce an amendment to this particular article, which is in fact a charter change. Back in 2010, I was a member of the Charter Review Committee. We submitted a charter change which established sewer commissioners, and the body passed it. The proposal you see in front of you is not that article. It's not that charter change. The Charter Review Committee was not involved in changing this particular article. I don't know who changed it. I've attempted to find out what the word problems were with the original article. I've been unable to determine that. The changes that I'm suggesting here, and they're minor, and what they do basically is to establish the sewer commissioners as a policy board or commission, similar to the assessors. The employees, including the superintendent, would be hired by the town administrator, the way it is today. The superintendent reports to the maintenance director, who reports to the town administrator. That would remain the same. There is nothing that would allow, on the proposal, they would have to come before a town meeting because they're dealing with an enterprise fund no matter what. But this would be outside of the jurisdiction of the town administrator because of the way this is worded. It exempts him from hiring and firing, and he can only negotiate contracts.
Yeah, Mr. Pasevich, you only have 2 minutes.
Okay.
So
2
you
or
got about
5?
10 seconds.
It's an amendment. I thought I had 5.
Yeah, he gets 5 minutes. You're correct. You get 5 minutes.
Thank you. The town administrator would not be able to negotiate contracts with these employees because it's outside his jurisdiction. He has no input. So the amendments that you see up there, basically what it does, the first one is an addition. For some reason, they dropped, shall make plans for both the installation of a system of sanitary sewer and for the maintenance of a sanitary sewer system. I included that back in. That was in the original. We have the responsibility for the appointment in the proposed one is set forth for the sewer commissioners. I put it back the way it was. The ratification responsibility is for the sewer superintendent is with the sewer commissioners. And then the last sentence, it involves that the sewer superintendent would report to the town administrator or his designee versus the sewer commissioners. And then you have section D. These are very small. Sewer commission, you replace it with town administrator. Board of selectmen, you replace it with the board of sewer commissioners. And this lines up exactly the way the board of assessors is written. And this is exactly what we passed in 2010. I want to stress that. That's what we passed. How it got changed, why it got changed, and who it changed, I don't know. But I was part of that committee, and I know the committee was not involved in changing the wording of this bylaw. Okay? I think that this is the better way to do it. It keeps control of this whole operation under the town and does not allow this department to go out on its own. So those are the changes that you're looking at, and it puts it under the control of the town administrator. Thank you.
Thank you. This is going to be a little confusing, I think, but I will try to read to you what I think Mr. Pasevich is trying to say. In section 1, under B, it would read, powers and duties. The Board of Sewer Commissioners shall make careful studies of the resources, possibilities, and needs of the town as they relate to the availability of the sewers And this is where you would insert, and shall make plans for both the installation of a system of sanitary sewer and for the maintenance of a sanitary sewer system. And then the next sentence would be, the Board of Sewer Commissioners shall develop a comprehensive or master plan for a townwide system of sanitary sewers, setting forth in graphic and textual form policies to govern the future growth and development of the entire town. The Board of Sewer Commissioners shall, in conjunction with other land use bodies, assist in developing a long-range strategic plan for the guiding town growth and development, The powers and authority of the Board of Sewer Commissioners shall include oversight of the sewer enterprise fund, setting rates and charges for the use of the sanitary sewer system,
That's where the change goes in.
ratification responsibility for the sewer superintendent, and then striking out as set forth herein, see section 737D, and then would go on to read, and providing advice to the Board of Selectmen relating to intergovernmental agreements concerning sanitary sewers, the day-to-day operation, care, and maintenance of the
Sanitary sewers.
of the sewer department?
No, sanitary sewers
okay.
shall be
of the sanitary sewers shall be under the supervision of the town administrator or his designee. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Then we would go down to section D, where it says sewer superintendent. The appointment of a sewer superintendent shall be made by the town administrator
Correct, that's change.
and shall become effective on the 15th day following the day on which notice of the appointment has been filed with the Board of Sewer Commissioners,
Correct.
unless the Board of Sewer Commissioners shall within that period and by a majority vote of all of its members reject such an appointment or have earlier vote to affirm it. Is that correct?
Correct, and the deletion of D-I and double I.
Okay, so we would take out the double I.
One, the single I and the double I. So basically, it's just the changing of words from town administrator versus the sewer commissioners.
Okay, and then section I and 2 you were deleting in its entirety?
That's correct. I and I.
I and I. I think I got it. That's what we have proposed before us. To speak to Mr. Pasevich's amendment on my left.
Madam Moderator, point of order.
State your point.
This is a petition article.
Yes.
And I thought petition articles had to be voted up or down, that you couldn't amend a petition article.
Council to...
Madam Moderator, through the previous speaker, what you're saying would be correct about including the article in the warrant. When the Board of Selectmen receives a petitioned article, it has to put the petitioned article in the warrant exactly in the form that the petitioners gave it. Once it's in the warrant, once it gets in front of all of you, it's fair game for amendment. So, there you go.
Thanks.
Am I right?
Madam Moderator, through you, I have a couple questions as well. I believe the previous speaker said that they would not have to come back to town meeting, and I'd like a little clarification from either the proponent or town council.
To answer the question, that's not what I said. I said they would have to come back to town meeting since their budget is involved in an enterprise fund. They have to come back by law. They have to come back to the town meeting in order to get funds from the enterprise.
I understand that, but the original statement you made under the original article was that they would not have to come back to town meeting.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay, so that one's done. And that the town could not negotiate the contracts for the employees at the water pollution control facility?
I said the town administrator couldn't.
Well, then who would be negotiating the contract?
Mr. McDonald, please direct your question.
Well, okay, that's my question. Is the town, I don't understand that. I believe they still work for the town, so I'd like a little clarification from either the proponent or the town council.
To answer that question.
To answer the question?
To answer the question.
The way this is set up, the superintendent who's in charge of the day-to-day activities reports to the sewer commissioners. As such, the town administrator has no jurisdiction then over the sewer department. It's the sewer commissioners. So it's outside the jurisdiction of the town administrator in areas that he can negotiate contracts per the charter. That's why the statement was made.
Am I right?
Michelle Langford, District 4. I just have a question. I don't know who can answer it. Are we voting on paid positions? I thought these were not going to be paid positions. And is this going to need funding?
We are voting on the amendment that's before you.
Right.
And I don't see that there is any pay involved. Under Section A, there shall be a Board of Sewer Commissioners consisting of 5 members who shall be elected to 3-year terms so arranged so that the terms of nearly an equal number of members as possible shall expire each year.
So these people will not be paid. Is that correct?
I don't see anything in the article that would indicate that they would be paid, no.
Okay, thank you.
Am I right?
Madam Moderator, through you to the proponent of the amendment, he's saying that the day-to-day work of the sewers should be under the direct supervision of the town administrator. My question to him is to ask why the town administrator would do the day-to-day work administration of the water pollution control when you have a sewer superintendent who's qualified in these matters, who's certified in these matters to do the day-to-day work.
To answer the question?
To answer the question, today, the way it exists, the superintendent reports to the maintenance director, who's in charge of the superintendent, who in turn reports to the town administrator. In the proposal I have up there, it's the town administrator or his designee, which would be the town administrator. We keep it the way it is. The original article was drawn up to address what was happening today. That's why we had it that way, because that's what happens today. This changes all of that. And it was not the intent of the original article to do that. Thank you.
Selectman Titlebaum.
I have questions about the amendment to the extent that while I don't necessarily support a separate Board of Sewer Commissioners, we'll get to that later, to the extent that if we're going to wind up with one, your sewer commissioner, I think, your sewer commission rather, needs to have some control over the superintendent. I don't like these split jurisdictional affairs where you've got a town employee who serves somewhat at the pleasure of a board, but yet reports to an outside authority in the form of the town administrator. I think it tends to create friction between the board, to whom some of the responsibility is given for oversight, and then the town administrator on the other part. And it makes the town administrator's job tougher, because now you don't deal with just an employee, you've got to deal with the employee's board. It makes the board's job tougher because now you're not dealing direct with the employee, but you got to deal with the town administrator. So I think just in terms of the line of communication, if you're going to have a sewer commission, the sewer commissioners might as well have the authority over the superintendent. Thank you.
On my left.
George Barrett, Precinct 5. For one thing, I don't think there's many of us that can read that in this room. The other question is there currently written a roles and responsibilities for sewer commissioners as they stand today?
To answer the question?
To answer the question.
I believe in the charter, George, there's a section that was pulled out that has a basic explanation of what the sewer commissioners do.
And does either the article or the amendment reflect any of that?
Yes.
Which? The article or the amendment, or both?
The article does, the amendment does to a certain point. There's some changes.
Section 1B
I can
lays out the powers
Thank you.
and
We
duties.
can see that much better now.
To answer the question, Madam Moderator.
I believe Mr. Slavin answered that question.
Yep.
Any
Thank
further question? Mr. Slavin?
Yes, I'll be very brief. This particular sewer commissioner article does go back to 2010. There's a section that's sitting in our charter right now, Section 8 of the charter, which has a transition period, which I wrote as the chairman of this particular committee back then. I was also heavily involved in the actual charter articles, et cetera, including this one. The idea of the changeover, there was issues with language that languished, as everybody has already said. The language issues as changed now, we may end up with the same situation. There's no way to know. The bottom line is the idea was to take what we had, streamline it so there's less confusion, less duplication of work, and have a set of sewer commissioners who are in charge of the project and have a sewer superintendent who basically runs it. The idea of putting a town administrator in the middle who doesn't have enough time in the day, as we basically are saying that we don't have enough time, to me is foolishness. The idea is to streamline this, to get this to run properly. I would ask you to defeat this.
Is there anything further to be said to the amendment?
Madam Moderator, I believe I have a little bit of time.
You have about a minute left.
Okay, thank you. There is nothing that addresses the sewer commissioners in the current charter. We had an issue on the charter for sewer commissioners that was removed, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago. This will be the charter article that addresses sewer commissioners. There's nothing else there, okay? Streamlining or whatever you want to call it. Remember, today, the sewer commissioner, the sewer superintendent reports to the director of maintenance who reports to the town administrator. It's in the town. If you switch this out and they lose control over the superintendent, it is no longer going to be a town department. That's why this amendment's there. Thank you.
Am I right?
Thomas Bickey, Precinct 3. I'd like to move the question.
We have a motion before us in a second to move the question. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The question has been moved. The amendment now comes before you as proposed by Mr. Pasevich. I will try to read through it again so you're very clear of what you're voting on. In Section 3-7, Board of Sewer Commissioners, paragraph B, powers and duties. The Board of Sewer Commissioners shall make careful studies of the resources, possibilities, and needs of the town as they relate to the availability of sanitary sewers, and then he will insert, and shall make plans for both the installation of a system of sanitary sewer and for the maintenance of a sanitary sewer system. The Board of Sewer Commissioners shall develop a comprehensive or master plan for a town-wide system of sanitary sewers, setting forth in graphic and textual form policies to govern the future growth and development of the entire town. The Board of Sewer Commissioners shall, in conjunction with other land use bodies, assist in developing a long-range strategic plan for guiding town growth and development. The power and authority of the Board of Sewer Commissioners shall include oversight of the Sewer Enterprise Fund, setting rates and charges for the use of the sanitary sewer system, ratification responsibility for the, and then strike out, appointment of the sewer superintendent, strike out for the appointment of the, so for the sewer superintendent, and then strike out as set forth herein, see section 3-7D, and providing advice to the Board of Selectmen relating to intergovernmental agreements concerning sanitary sewers, the day-to-day operation, care, and maintenance of the sanitary sewers shall be under the supervision of the town administrator or his designee. And then we go down to paragraph D, sewer superintendent. The appointment of a sewer superintendent shall be made by the town administrator and shall become effective on the 15th day following the day on which notice of the appointment has been filed with the Board of Sewer Commissioners, unless the Board of Sewer Commissioners, and then strike out number 1, shall, within that period and by a majority vote of all its members, reject such an appointment, or, and then strike out the 2, have either voted to affirm it. And then you would delete section I and section II. That is the amendment as it is before you. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. We are now back to the original motion before us as presented by the petitioner.
Point of order. Could we have a count on that, please?
I'm sorry?
Could we have a count on that vote?
There's no question in my mind, Mr. Pasevich.
I'd still like to have a count. I believe we get 7 people, we can have a count.
Will the tellers please come forward? All those in favor, please raise your cards. What we're voting on, we're taking a town account. Mr. Pasevich has requested that we count that vote that was just taken. The vote that we just took was whether or not to support his amendment. He questions whether it passed by a majority. He questions that it failed. So he would like to have a hand count. So we're counting your previous vote. All those at the microphone, please. I will not recognize someone just standing there yelling out.
I'm sorry that happened before at the town meeting. I did not see 7 people, Mike Poll, Precinct 2, I did not see 7 people stand in support of Mr. Pasevich's motion.
Thank you, Mr. Poll, and I do appreciate that, but I do want to give this fair opportunity that we take an accurate count. It is an important article that comes before us. So what we are voting on is all those in favor of Mr. Pasevich's amendment, please raise your hand and hold your cards up. Section 1.
Section 1, 1.
Section 1, 1. Section 2.
6.
Section 2, 6. Section 3.
11.
11. Section 4.
2.
2. All those opposed to Mr. Pasevich's amendment? Section 1.
15, 1-5.
Section 115. Section 2.
13.
I'm sorry, 1-3.
Yes.
Section 3.
56.
And Section 4.
32, 3-2.
The vote was 116 against and 24. The amendment fails. Now we are back to the original motion before us as proposed by the petitioner. Is there anything to be said on the motion before us? Am I right?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brenda Ekstrom, Precinct 2. I probably can guess how the vote's going to go, but I would urge people to vote against this. I understand that we want sewer commissioners. However, the way this is written, it is making them unaccountable. I find it very interesting that 4 articles ago, we were adding more people to the finance side so we could get greater accountability and more knowledge. And now we're stripping the accountability, calling it streamlining. We're essentially going to put 5 people, with or without experience, elected people, which is fine, but they're going to be overseeing an entire department, a $6 or $7 million budget, and you know, they're there for 3 years. They could do the damage that they want and be on and go their own way. And I just think that there needs to be some consistency. And through having the municipal maintenance director, municipal maintenance director and the town administrator to at least oversee that. It's as the proponent of the amendment had said, it's like the assessors. The assessors are an elected board. However, the assessor and the employees of the assessing department negotiate with the town. The town administrator is there to keep track of whether they show up or not, or theoretically. And as far as this, you're going to have an unpaid elected board that's overseeing if things are getting done, rather than having the steps in place. So I would urge defeat of this and get it the way that it was supposed to be,
10
so
seconds.
that we have people that we're paying there to oversee it, rather than the elected board that may or may not.
Time. Am I right?
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. I too rise to urge you to vote against this. There were some questions raised. The way this article is written right now, nothing would prevent the sewer commissioners from giving themselves a salary. Nothing would prevent them from giving themselves health benefits. And as we see, they could get as much as a 99% payment from the sewer enterprise fund, if they put it in the budget, to give themselves a salary and health benefits. There's no control. That's what I was trying to tell you. They can do that now. If you pass this charter article, they can give themselves a salary and they can give themselves health benefits. Vote it down. Thank you.
To speak to the original article, Selectman Tenenbaum.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a brief amendment. If you will look under subsection A, composition, term of office, currently reads there shall be a board of sewer commissioners consisting of 5 members. Between 5 and members, I'd like to amend this to read uncompensated.
I have a second to speak to your amendment.
I think it speaks for itself, takes care of the concerns of the previous speaker.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak to the amendment now before us to insert the word uncompensated between the number 9, a member is in section A. Am I right?
Eddie Pasevich, I agree with that, except compensation does not include health benefits. So if you want to do compensation and health benefits, I'd be in favor of that.
Well, but before that, Madam Moderator, through you, may I ask Town Council if the word uncompensated would relate to health benefits as well?
To answer the question.
Madam Moderator, through you, the previous speaker and the meeting. Right now, I believe under the federal tax code, health benefits and insurance benefits are considered taxable compensation. So that's the way the tax code works. But I'd respectfully suggest that if there's any doubt in anyone's mind, that they simply add a proviso regarding health, group health, and insurance benefits.
Well, with that in mind, Madam Moderator, may I withdraw my original amendment?
You may withdraw your original amendment. If the person seconded it would like to withdraw their second, do you wish to make a new amendment?
Yes, I do. Through you, Madam Moderator, Town Council, what was the language you suggested? Uncompensated and no group health and or insurance benefits.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, so we have a new amendment before us in section 3-7, composition, term of office. There shall be a board of sewer commissioners consisting of 5 uncompensated members with no group health and or insurance benefits.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Thank you.
Is there anything to be said to Mr. Teitelbaum's amendment? Seeing no one standing, I will take a vote on Mr. Teitelbaum's amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes by a majority. Mr. Teitelbaum's amendment now becomes part of the original motion before us. So what we are taking a vote on is the original motion with the addition that the members will be uncompensated and receive no group health and or insurance benefits. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It passes by a majority. Article 25. I have a motion on Article 25.
I move the town vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Affordable Housing Reserve Fund and any other monies available in the Community Preservation Fund the sum of $50,000 to South Shore Housing, doing business as Cranberry Manor, for an affordable housing restriction and for general rehabilitation of the apartments in the affordable housing complex located at 2220 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, Mass., designated on the Assessor's Maps number 103, Lot 1015 Alpha, pursuant to a grant between the Board of Selectmen and the South Shore Housing on such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deem appropriate, which agreement shall include a provision requiring the guarantee to provide to the town an affordable housing restriction in said property, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept such restriction.
Do I have a second? I have a second. To speak to the article? On my left?
Madam Moderator, Angela Dunham, Precinct 3, CPC Chair. I would ask through you, Madam Moderator, to give the time, my 5 minutes, over to Mr. John Hickson, who represents South Shore Housing, the proponent of this project.
I take it that Mr. Hickson is not a registered voter and you're asking for courtesy of the floor?
I am.
I will ask the body to give courtesy of the floor to Mr. Hickson to explain this article. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Mr. Hickson?
Thank you.
Thank you, residents of town of Wareham. South Shore Housing has owned the property for some time and has, in the initial round, raised up the units from being halfway below ground. And in this second round, we are looking to do another approximately $1.5 million worth of renovations to the property. And in order to do that, the state requires that we have some indication of community support in the form of some funds from the town. So we have asked for $50,000 from the town to match the approximately $2 million that we will get from the state, and a total project of approximately $4 million. So we are asking for your help with this. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
To speak to the article? I'm sorry, may I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 4-0-0.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action 1-7-0. The Finance Committee voted against favorable action on this article. The property will be undergoing a major rehabilitation which will be funded from other sources. The Finance Committee was concerned about the overall cost of the project and felt that $50,000 was not the best use of CPA funds at this time.
Thank you. To speak to the article, on my right?
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
State your point.
I hate to say this, but based on the count we did on my amendment, I don't think we have a quorum to deal with this now.
Are you asking for a quorum count?
Yes.
Will the tellers please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please hold up your cards.
Thank you. Miss Ellery, thank you. One more? Gotcha. I'm sorry.
Section 1.
Section 129, 29.
Section 129. Section 2.
19.
Section 219. Section 3.
76.
Section 376. Section 4.
Section 4, 3737.
We have 161 voters in the hall. We have a quorum to act on this article. Is there anyone to speak to Article 25? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. This requires a majority vote. The motion before you is that the town vote to appropriate from Community Preservation Affordable Housing Reserve Fund a sum of $50,000 as you have before you on the screen. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Passes by majority. Article 27. May I have a motion?
I move that the town vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Unallocated Fund or any other monies available in the Community Preservation Fund under the category of Historic Preservation the sum of $100,000 for a historical preservation restriction and the restoration of the historic chimney tower at British Landing Condominiums and Yacht Club, 53 Main Street, Wareham, Mass., designated on Assessor's Map number 46, Lot 1006.
Do I have a second? To speak to the article?
Madam Moderator, Carol Anderson, Precinct 1. This article speaks to a request made by British Landing to the Community Preservation Committee for assistance in funding the restoration of the chimney tower on the British Landing site, which is beginning to fall into a grave state of disrepair. We had a couple of project goals, and we've put together a very brief slide presentation to give everyone a sense of the historical importance of this particular site, and in particular this chimney. So the goals were to completely restore the 112-year-old chimney tower by repairing the weak spots and replacing missing brick, and also to preserve an historic town landmark that has been part of Wareham's history since the early 1900s. The trustees and residents of British Landing have been diligent in the upkeep of this complex, trying as best we can to maintain and preserve its character. However, we're facing a difficult decision regarding this 112-year-old Custodes brick chimney tower. The structure has begun to deteriorate at a rapid pace, and the cost of the restoration is more than the association can afford on its own. Since the falling brick is now beginning to create a hazard not only for the residents of British Landing, but also to town residents who use the walkway along the shoreline. We are faced with the prospect of having to demolish the structure unless we can obtain some funding assistance to repair and restore it. We'd like to stress to the town that we are not asking for an appropriation of additional monies. We are asking for your support and approval to use money that has been already appropriated to the Community Preservation Committee, and which is also matched by state funding. There's a historic chronology, and I'm going to go over this quickly for you, just to give you an idea of how important this particular area has been to the town of Wareham. From about 1670 through 1800, we've determined that the Bumpus family had used this entire area for shipbuilding, fishing, and a few wharfside businesses. In the 1800s, we know that the British warship Nimrod sent troops down in the longboats somewhere in the time of 1814. Those troops came ashore, terrorized the town, and took several hostages. In the mid-1800s, industrial operations began in that area and flourished on the site. The Wareham Manufacturing Company had a foundry on the site prior to 1850, and then Franconia Iron Works were on the site from 1864 until 1892, thus contributing to Wareham's rich industrial history. In the 1900s, the New Bedford and Onset Railroad Company purchased the property and operated and stored the trolley cars that ran between Onset and New Bedford. The car barn and power station and chimney were built between 1900 and 1902 and supplied power not only to the trolleys but also to the town of Wareham itself. A.D. Makepeace purchased or leased the bulk of that property for berry storage sometime around 1920. The New Bedford and Onset Railroad used a third of the car barn for trolley and the Gateway Bus Company, and then the Gateway Bus Company occupied that property from 1918 until 1950. Makepeace also created a fruit and berry dehydration business during World War II and shipped that product overseas to the troops. Around 1982, the property changed hands
You
again.
have one
and was
more minute.
purchased by the Chestnut Hill Realty Group to construct the condominium complex now known as British Landing. This map shows the earliest buildings on the site, and the next map shows. Are we out of time, Madam?
No, you probably have another 30 seconds.
All right. The Franconia Iron and Steel Company, the car barn and powerhouse is the important slide here. These edifices are still in place today and pretty much the same. And then the chimney, which was built by the Custodes Company, remains intact and unchanged. Although the buildings were modified, the chimney has not been. And that is the edifice that we would seek assistance in restoring and leaving. It has been an important nautical landmark for the town and also an important historical landmark for the town of Wareham.
10 seconds.
If you go to the last slide, it really gives a good picture of what the complex looks like now, and you can see the prominence of that chimney. So we're asking to get assistance
Time.
to restore this.
Time. Is there anything to be, may I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted favorable action 1-3-0.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action, 3 in favor, 5 opposed, no abstentions. We voted unfavorably on this particular article, although we understand the value of historic preservation, and we understand that the brick chimney is a part of Wareham's skyline. However, it was explained to us that since the building that was associated with the chimney would not qualify for historic preservation restriction because it had been previously remodeled. Consequently, future use and maintenance of the property would not be subject to the same restrictions that have been placed on the chimney itself. Some members of the committee felt this would not be an acceptable use of a historic restriction.
Thank you. To speak to the article on my left?
Yes.
Michelle Langford, District
On my
4.
left. I think Nan was standing
I'm
first.
sorry.
Thank you. Nancy Miller, onset. I'm speaking from CPC as well as the Historic District Commission. The information you received at the FinCom is wrong. The property will be coming into the Narrows Historic District. It does qualify. This is also, we need to make it clear, this is a matching funds grant. The people at British Landing are matching about between 40 and 50,000 in order to help this project along. This is not just CPC funds that are being used. Further, there will be a protective covenant on the chimney as well as the buildings by going into the historic district. So this is totally appropriate use of the funds under historic preservation because it is protecting one of the town's very historic assets. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I right?
Sorry. Michelle Langford, District 4. I just, you know, we bought the Tremont Nail Factory and it's still sitting there and it's not going anywhere. And I just think $100,000 is a lot of money, and we haven't done anything with the Tremont Nail Factory. When we voted for this Community Preservation Act, I just don't think this is an appropriate use for that kind of money.
Thank you. Am I right?
Jeff Sweat, Precinct 1. Through you to Council, I appreciate the fact that a clarification was made that this would be part of a matching program, but I am uncomfortable that there's no guarantee in the language of this motion that would guarantee that that match in fact was made. Would Council agree with me that there is no guarantee of that match?
To answer the question?
Madam Moderator, through the previous speaker, yes, I would agree that the language here does not guarantee a match.
Thank you.
On my left, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett, on my left.
I'll let Nan answer that question.
Well,
If that's
there was no question. Council answered the question. Council answered the question.
All right,
So, Mr. Barrett?
Then, Madam Moderator, Community Preservation needs to make an amendment to this motion.
Not at this time. You'll have to wait your turn. I would suggest getting behind. You would come after Mr. Pasevich.
You want to make it?
Mr. Barrett, you're next.
The matching funds.
I'm not quite sure how to word that, but I rose to point out that when this body voted to accept the provisions of the Community Preservation Act, we recognize that there are projects out there beyond the ability of the town to government itself to effect without impacting services. This is one of those projects that I know it's not a town-owned building or anything like that. It's just a historical landmark that the residents and hopefully the people want to protect. That's what CPA is all about, and I think it should be supported. We can adjust to make sure that the funds that have been promised to match will be there. We have every reason to believe they will, but we can amend it to reflect that tonight if you like.
Gentleman on my right.
Eddie Pasevich, Precinct 1. I have the minutes from the CPC meeting regarding the residents from British Landing coming forward. They mentioned that the bricks were falling off the chimney and the chimney was a hazard. And they asked the CPC for funds. Heck of a deal. I got a problem with my chimney and I go to the CPC and ask them to fix it. Give me $100,000. Okay? I don't see this. This chimney is not owned by the town. It's owned by a private organization. If they have a problem with this chimney, let them pay to either fix it or tear it down. It does not merit $100,000 of our money, that's our tax money, to fix that chimney. Thank you.
On my left, Ms. Miller, would you like to make your amendment now? Or to speak to the article as it stands?
All right, we'd like to make a motion.
You would like to make an amendment?
An amendment, sorry. CPC would like to make an amendment that adds the language that an additional $40,000 will be coming from British Landing themselves, I guess. That was going to be taken care of in the memorandum of understanding that we require on all of our grants, but I can see the need for putting it into the article.
Can you give me that motion, that amendment in writing, please? The tellers have a piece of paper for you.
All right.
I want to be sure we put it in where it belongs. Do you want to just write it? Mr. McDonald?
I just want a little clarification, if it's okay with you. I believe the conversation that we had the night it was presented is this was not a preservation, this was a restoration. Am I correct?
No.
Okay.
It is a preservation and a restoration.
Okay, so it's not the original bricks. These are bricks that are not part of the original chimney that are being brought in to...
The bricks that are there that can be used will be used. The company is still in business, and so they will replicate the bricks that are disintegrated to a point that they are unusable. That is a standard practice in a preservation or a restoration of a historic property.
That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Claire, I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to be writing here.
Hold on. I think we can add it. I have
that would be much
90% of it written out. So
thank you.
I believe your amendment would be, I move that the town vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Unallocated Fund or any other monies available in the Community Preservation Fund under the category of Historic Preservation, the sum of $100,000 for historical preservation restriction and the restoration of the historic chimney tower at British Landing Condominiums and Yacht Club, 53 Main Street, Wareham, Mass., designated on Assessors Map number 46, Lot 1006, conditioned on the receipt of an additional $40,000 from private sources.
I'm sorry, could I add another sentence? And further, a preservation restriction will be placed upon the structure. I can't see it. I'm sorry.
Further a
where?
Preservation. Yeah,
Oh,
it's already in there.
Never mind. Sorry. It is there.
Okay, so it's already in there.
Got the wrong
So what we're adding at the bottom is an additional, conditioned on the receipt of an additional $40,000 from private sources.
Thank you.
And I had a second. We now have, is there anything to be said to the amendment? Seeing no one standing, I will take a vote on the motion before you with the amendment added, conditioned on the receipt of an additional $40,000 from private sources. All those in favor, please say aye. We're in the middle of a vote. State your point. That's what I'm voting on. No, on the motion with the amendment. I mean, we're taking a vote on the amended motion by adding the words in a condition on the receipt of an additional $40,000. That's what we're voting on.
I'm sorry, Madam Moderator. What you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that you're voting on this motion with this amendment. And I'm saying that you have to vote on that amendment first.
Correct. We're voting on the amendment.
Okay.
Condition on the receipt of an additional $40,000 from private sources.
Thank you. I'm sorry I interrupted.
I think at this point I'm going to go aye again. So we're voting on the amendment. It's getting a little warm up here too. We're voting on the amendment as proposed by Mrs. Miller, conditioned on the receipt of an additional $40,000 from private sources. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes by a majority. The amendment now becomes part of the main motion, and your vote will come on the main motion with the addition of the amendment. Would anyone like to speak to the main motion with the amendment? On my right.
Madam Moderator, and to the body, I apologize for my previous outburst. My name is Mike Pohl, Precinct 2. I just want some clarification. I don't quite understand what a historical preservation restriction is. I think there's an understanding that if this is public funds of some sort, that then the public has some right of access or some sort of right. Could that be clarified, please?
To explain what a preservation restriction is only.
Okay, to answer the question, thank you. The Commonwealth now requires that community preservation puts a protective covenant on properties that we fund for historic preservation so that those properties are protected. This is a deed attachment that requires the property owner, whether it be the town of Wareham or British Landing, to maintain the property according to the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines.
Thank you. Am I right?
I rise to speak against this motion, Madam Chairman, because as Ms. Miller mentioned, there's the word maintain in there. First of all, we're giving them $100,000. We're not loaning them $100,000. And we were talking about doing an assessment of playgrounds and sites we already own. $100,000 would go a long way to fixing up one of our playgrounds. Number two, maintain. Does that mean in the future, if something happens to this chimney that we now have a preservation clause against, that we have to keep up with the repairs and maintain it? I don't see anything in here that says, she just said we have to, under the Preservation Act, we have to maintain it. So are we going to be expending ongoing funds to keep this up? And the last question I have is, if we put money into this and it then becomes under our aegis, who's responsible for insurance or anything that happens if we have a hurricane come through?
I don't believe there's a question in there. She's sitting down.
Oh, okay.
Is that a question, Mrs. Heath?
Well, part of it was, I guess.
Do you want to ask a particular question?
Who's going to maintain it? And if we have a hurricane, do we have to rebuild it? Because we have now a historical preservation on it. Who pays insurance on it if a brick gets knocked off and hits somebody in the head?
To answer the question only?
Yes, I'm sorry. To answer the question through you, Madam Moderator, the property is owned by the British Landing condominiums. They are required to maintain their insurance policy like they do on any part of their property. Community preservation cannot pay for maintenance on any project, and historic preservation funds cannot be expended for playgrounds. That comes under recreation funds or open space funds. So they're two different funding sources, actually. But it is not the responsibility of the town to maintain that property because it belongs to the citizens living over at the British condominiums. If it was a town-owned building, it would be the town required to maintain their insurance policy.
Thank you. Am I right?
Don't sit down, Nance. Sorry. Brenda X from Precinct 2. 2 speakers ago, maybe I didn't understand the answer, but I believe the question was, will the public have access to the property that they can go out, look around on it? Is there going to be, because I know with community preservation funds, if we use it, open space recreation to improve our beach, we can't have it as a town beach. It has to be open to the state. And it was 2 speakers before me that had asked that question. That's my first question.
To answer the question only?
I think actually Carol would be better at this, but yes, we were told that folks are out on those docks all the time anyway. So you're not going to be able to go into the chimney because that's been closed since it was built. That is not something you'd be climbing up, but around the chimney, taking pictures in front of it, sure. There is public access out there now.
Okay. Thank you. And my second question through you, Madam Moderator, is the article reads Community Preservation Unallocated Fund. I know that 10% goes to affordable housing, 10% goes to historical preservation, 10% goes to open space recreation. Is the remaining 70% the unallocated fund?
Yes.
So therefore, this money actually could be used for other things because we're not taking it out of the historic 10%.
To answer the question?
Yes, we use our 10% in historic preservation to pay for the Tremont Nail property every year. So the unallocated funds can be used for many different things under the law, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. On my left, Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, in case I didn't say it earlier, George Barrett. I'm the planning board representative to community preservation. Just a couple comments. One, the public versus private ownership. In my mind, we didn't create CPA to fund town maintenance. We did it for projects such as these that we felt as a community were worthy of preservation. And Mrs. Anderson can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right now they have enough money to tear the structure down. And if you feel it's worthy of preservation, with your help, it can be restored. It's as simple as that. It's not, this money isn't going to go to buy books or pave streets or any other non-CPC projects. It's there for this type of project.
Thank you. Am I right?
Frank Heath, Precinct 2. It was just pointed out that the money basically would probably be coming out of the unallocated funds, not the historic preservation, because those monies are already being used. I know there's 3 funds. One is open space. That is what was originally brought up. But it's also, there's money that could be used for affordable housing. I just don't see historical preservation trumping the other 2. I would recommend everybody to vote against this article.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 27 with the amendment included? If not, the vote will now come on Article 27 as amended to include the words conditioned on the receipt of an additional $40,000 from private sources. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The motion fails. I believe that we have acted upon all of the non-monetary.
I'm sorry, Madam Moderator, we'd like a count, please.
We don't need to take account. We have taken up all of the articles, and we had a motion before us on the first night of town meeting to adjourn this meeting until June 18th at 7:00 p.m. in the Wareham High School auditorium.
Madam Moderator, that motion was not made. The motion was to table. There was no motion made. It was said that the motion would be made at the end of this meeting.
No. I will read the motion as was presented to us on the first night of town meeting. I move to table discussion of the following monetary articles, Articles 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 13, 14, and 19, and then at the conclusion of consideration of the non-table articles, I move to adjourn this meeting until June 18, 2013 at 7:00 p.m. in the Wareham High School auditorium. So we had a motion before us to adjourn this meeting until June 18, 2013.
Madam Moderator, may I ask a question then? Your original statement says that town meeting considers all articles. Town meeting is to consider all warrant articles. In your statement, you say that all warrant articles are considered if they are voted up, voted down, or tabled. Why would we be having another town meeting since all articles have been voted up, down, or tabled?
We are not, we have a motion before us
The motion
that moved to adjourn this meeting until June 18th. So this meeting will stand adjourned.
But there needs to be no other meeting. There are no articles.
Yes, there does. There does. This meeting is now adjourned until June 18th at 2013 at 7 p.m. in the auditorium.